Professor Tim Campbell, and I'm going to be talking to you today about creative thinking for business. In about 10 minutes, or just less than 10 minutes, I'm going to cover 4 key topics of creativity. We're going to look at what creative thinking is, why it's important, and especially in business. I'm going to take a business look at this. Measuring your creativity, and I'm going to lastly finish with some tips to help you improve your creative thinking, and again particularly in the business situation. So let's start with the definition. There's many definitions of creativity out there, but they all tend to boil down to this one. It's the ability to produce novel and useful ideas, and that's how we're going to think of creativity. It's often paired with innovation, which is a different thing. That's what you actually do with these ideas. It's the implementation of ideas generated from the creative process. It's the outcome of your creativity. Why is it important? It's important in every field. Creativity has been around for thousands of years. We've had the wheel, we've had cars, we've had aeroplanes, we've had monitors, we've had paper, we've had printing presses, and many, many more things that have all been the outcome of creative thinking that have then been implemented into innovations. It's important in every single field as well. Science, business, art and design, philosophy, humanities, they all deal with novel and useful ideas to get them ahead. And in professions, creativity is important whether you're the CEO or whether you're someone like a gardener. All of these professions will always be helped if you come up with useful and novel new ways of doing things, more effective ways of doing things. It's absolutely crucial for careers. Oxford Economics did a survey of human resource managers, and this was their results in their Global Talent 2021 survey, which asked these HR managers what are the most crucial skills for people in the business world leading up to 2021. Creative thinking was the top of the list. There's a very clear reason for that. It's because of change. We live in a business environment where things are constantly changing and at a rate faster than ever before. Businesses have to do things, they have to adapt constantly. New ways of doing things, better ways of doing things, all of the time. Creativity is incredibly important. What is creative thinking? Let's just look at it from 2 examples from Google questions, from Google interview questions. These are actual questions that Google uses through its interview process to actually analyse or look at the different types of thinking that the candidates possess. Let's try an example. My first example, how many golf balls would you fit in a school bus? Well, the answer, or one of the sort of answer they're looking for, is about 500,000. The reasoning is because it's about 200 golf balls long, it's about 50 golf balls high, and about 20 golf balls wide. If you do the math, you come up with something about 500,000. That's an example of analytical decision-making, or analytical thinking rather. It follows rules. It follows analysis. Now my next question. If you're shrunk to about that high, and you're put into a blender, it's about to turn on in 60 seconds, what do you do? Well, you know, the best answers that they came up with were you could use the marks on the side of the blender as a ladder to try and climb up and out the top. There's a little hole in the top there. Someone else came up with the idea you wait till it turns on and then you use the rush of air to push you through the top of the blender. This is creative thinking. It's not relying on rules, it's thinking of novel, new ways. And that's what we're looking for. And that's what Google, of course, is looking for. They need analysis, but they also need new ideas. They need creativity. So how creative are you? It's claimed that 98% of 5-year-olds test as highly creative, yet only 2% of adults do. Now we could perhaps argue these exact percentages, but when you read around the subject, this is very much the trend of any study you will see. Why? Because kids don't care what they say. They're silly, they're flamboyant, they're funny. They don't care what other people think of them. They don't care about the ideas that they come up with. They just come out with them. As we grow up, of course, this creativity becomes much, much less. We tend to think of things through education, through society, through all manner of different things around us as we grow. We tend to think of rules. We tend to become strained by thinking by rules and proper ways of doing things. So our creativity, we don't lose it, it just gets tucked away within us. We're not so keen to look silly or to come out with any ideas that might appear on the top of our head. But that's actually what we need to do in creativity. So let's measure your creativity. One of the most famous tests is Guildford. He came up with the alternative uses test. And he takes any everyday objects and basically asks how many different uses can you think of for it. I've picked a paperclip. And I'm going to give you 2 minutes to think of as many uses as you can for a paperclip. So, in a minute I'm going to ask, you can pause me, take your 2 minutes, write down your list, and we'll see what you come up with. So you can pause me now. Okay. Now, good to have you back after the 2 minutes, I'm sure. So how many things did you think of for a paperclip? Well, answers have come up with, firstly, to hold papers together. That's probably the most obvious one. But there's also been answers such as cufflinks, earrings, a mini trombone, a tool that you can use to restart your router. You know, the router has these very little buttons that you can push your paperclip into. And there's been all manner of different uses for this. Now, in measuring your creativity, it's not just the number of different uses that you come up with, it's also the originality, how original these ideas are. Perhaps holding paper together isn't particularly original, but a mini trombone, well, that's fairly original. We also look for things like, are there different groupings? Are you getting things that are similar? For example, earrings and cufflinks will both be accessories, so they'll be grouped together, so they're not particularly distinctive. And so there's various ways we actually look for in this test, but simply for our purposes, if we just look at fluency, the best I've seen in my classes of doing this, somebody getting 28 different uses in 2 minutes. So if you're up around there, you're doing extremely well indeed. Another quick test. Torrance built on Guildford's work, and you came up with this. Again, I'll give you 2 minutes to make a picture out of this. Okay, back after 2 minutes. Again, there's a number of different things we actually do look for when we're actually measuring the creativity from these things, but I'm just going to give you one simple one. Did you draw a face? If you drew a face, not very creative. If you drew anything else, more creative. Okay. Now we're on to the tips. How do you improve your creativity? Think of the 4 C's. Constancy. Think about when you're getting stuck or wedded to one point of view. We call that constancy. Think about when you do it. Think about when people around you do it. Again, think about particularly in business situations or meetings. When do people just get stuck with one point of view? That's what we call constancy. Commitment's linked to it. Even when information comes to these people that they may in fact be wrong, they still get stuck to this one point of view. Again, consider when you're getting pulled into this trap and when others are. Compression, that simply means we look at problems too narrowly. That is basically looking at things inside the box rather than outside of the box. I've got a good example about compression. If I asked you, how would you put a giraffe into a refrigerator, you'd probably think of something a bit that's going to harm the poor giraffe. Most people do, that they're going to chop the poor thing up in some way. Well, you know what the answer is? You open the door, put the giraffe in, and close the door. Because you know what you've probably done? You'll probably think of a refrigerator being the size of the one that you have in your home. But of course, refrigerators come in all different sizes. You go into factories, and you have ones that could easily fit a giraffe. I never mentioned how big the refrigerator was, did I? So again, compression. Don't look at the problem too narrowly. Look at it more broadly. Last one, complacency. Creative thinking takes time. Complacency says some people just make decisions too quickly. They don't allow time for creative thinking. My last tips. Creative problem solving, particularly in business situations. Expose and challenge assumptions. Let's say the problem is, a very common one with most organisations, sales are down. We're not selling as much as we could. You know, when that problem's put on the table, I guarantee the first thing somebody would say, it's marketing's fault. They're not marketing the product well enough. There's too much competition, somebody else might say. Somebody else might say the quality's not very good. Or you'll get a whole range of different opinions on this. Challenge every single one of those viewpoints. Don't just accept them. Look for connections. Mind maps are very useful here. Put the problem in the middle. In this case, sales are down. On the left, put all of the causes of this issue. Everything everyone can think of. And try and link them together if there's some links between particularly the functions. On the other side of the diagram, the outcomes, the effects. What will happen if this keeps continuing? My third tip, look at multiple perspectives. This means getting in somebody else's shoes. So if your sales are down, how would your customers deal with this issue? How would your old boss deal with this issue? How would Richard Branson deal with this issue? Think of as many different groups and people as you can and think about how they would deal with the issue. That'll get you out of your own particular way of thinking and thinking of other people's perspectives on this. So that's my tip. A very quick lecture on creativity. The upshot of it is it's becoming one of the most important business skills that we could have. It's important no matter what your position, no matter what your industry and business. And I hope some of these tips will help you become more creative and produce those novel and useful ideas.